The American dream promises that hard work alone leads to massive wealth and fame. But for many, the money runs out and fame fades away. That trajectory assumes the latter is even there to begin with. It's a different problem entirely when the bottom rung is buried in concrete. Figures like Biddy Mason or Bessie Coleman started their lives at the absolute bottom of the societal hierarchy. Born in 1892 to Texas sharecroppers, Coleman's early life was defined by the grueling manual labor of cotton fields in the Jim Crow South. When aviation emerged as a new industry, the barriers were absolute. American flight schools explicitly banned African American and Native American women from their cockpits. This chart maps out a standard hierarchy of needs. We build from basic safety up to self-actualization, but Coleman's life points to an even higher peak, transcendence. Realizing your potential requires shifting the goal from accumulating money to creating a life that carries profound meaning. Escaping a systemic low point demands two critical internal tools: a disciplined positive internal narrative and a relentless spiritual drive. Coleman utilized both. She walked 4 miles a day to reach a segregated schoolhouse. Later, in Chicago, she worked double shifts as a manicurist and a restaurant manager, saving every cent with the conviction that she would eventually fly. When a blocked system refuses to budge, you have to find external leverage. Coleman found it in Robert S. Abbott, the influential founder of the Chicago Defender. Abbott used his newspaper to turn her quest into a public mission, securing the sponsorships she needed to bypass the American bans. She learned French and moved to Paris in 1920, placing herself in a culture that was willing to teach her what her own country would not. Earning an international pilot's license in France proved that resilience often requires leaving a rigged system behind rather than waiting for it to change. She returned home as an international sensation, beginning a career as a daredevil stunt flyer and barnstormer. The work was lucrative but physically dangerous. Stunt pilots in the 1920s relied on Army surplus biplanes made primarily of canvas and wood. Through these performances, she became Queen Bess, an icon of capability who commanded the sky. But she used that fame for more than just ticket sales. She refused to perform at any airshow that practiced racial segregation. Her primary goal was to use her earnings to open a flight school that would train a new generation of Black aviators. By sacrificing her own profit to enforce her principles, Coleman reached the peak of transcendence, choosing her race's representation over her own financial stability. In 1926, at age 34, her career ended abruptly. A loose wrench jammed the aircraft's controls, sending the plane into a catastrophic dive. She died before she could open the doors to her school. In a story about the accumulation of riches, this is where the momentum stops. The survival of a legacy depends on how the story is preserved. Marginalized figures are often erased from the record unless their community takes a deliberate role in guarding the narrative. Activists like Ida B. Wells stepped in immediately, leading 10,000 mourners in a massive funeral in Chicago to ensure Coleman was not forgotten. The Black press kept her name in the headlines, and in 1929, William J. Powell founded the Bessie Coleman Aero Club to fulfill her dream of training new pilots. These deliberate acts of storytelling by activists and journalists acted as the final guarantor of her legacy. A pioneer's impact relies on the community that survives them. That preserved story eventually reached the modern space age. Decades later, astronaut Mae Jemison carried Bessie Coleman's photograph on her first mission into orbit. In 2023, the nation that once barred her from its flight schools minted her face onto the American Women Quarter. Success is not measured by the wealth a person dies with, but by the meaning they forge. Bessie Coleman's life proves that true riches lie in a legacy so profound that future generations refuse to let it disappear.